to the cloud. For today's session is T32 itself, Introduction to Windows. An operating system is the most important software that a computer runs. During this session, we're going to learn the purpose and functions of an OS and learn how to overall navigate within the Windows OS by the end of this session. Our ultimate goal is to be able to describe the purpose and the function of the OS and identify the main features and functions within it, compare and contrast the various different windows that are out there. Lately is 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. As we're learning also, an OS or an operating system controls the actual operating system itself, does the job of handling all hardware within the actual system. It has a part which we call the kernel, which is really the one that's talking in machine language and is able and capable of controlling anything with the actual shell, with which is a GUI or graphical user interface within the actual S that allows and provides the user to interface to be able to manage these given files and to be able to manage the hardwares through this actual software that is on top of what we consider the kernel. The GUI interface could be a CLI or a shell, which in your case is usually what we consider the Windows Start menu or your desktop. That is the graphical user interface that you have to be able to go in there. We're going to learn what control panel and other different utilities that we have in there. On top of that, we have learned how to use the actual CLI, which is as close as possible. So is PowerShell. Obviously, PowerShell is much more robust when it comes to the capabilities. It does have all of the old DOS commands that is capable in the command line interface, but this PowerShell does have much more features and other things that you can do. Basically, anything that you can do as an administrator, you can actually create scripts for PowerShell that can actually obviously do it for you in an automated fashion. Since we just mentioned a plethora of different types of OSs, adaptability is a must, and future orientation is obviously also a must. These OSs continue to upgrade, and there is variances between each one, and we have to continue to learn. Even within Windows 7, we have Windows Starter, Windows Home Basic, Windows Home Premium, Windows 7 Professional, Windows 7 Enterprise, Windows 7 Ultimate. As you can see, all those are just in one version of Windows, but different types of the same one. And there is variances within the features that each one contains. So what is an OS? The OS itself is the interface between you, the user, and the computer itself. It is the one that does manage everything, your actual monitor, your keyboard, your screen, anything that the computer does, the actual OS is the one that provides the interface via the what? The actual shell, which is the interface that you're going into, and the actual kernel. If you could help me out here with this one and the definitions, which Chris, please.
Components of operating systems. Every OS has two main internal components. The kernel, this is the core of the OS as it has the most responsibility in how the user interacts with the hardware. Applications operating under the OS cannot get to hardware devices without the shell passing the requests to the kernel. The shell provides commands and procedures that programs use to do the actions they need. This is done through different interface tools such as the control panel or Windows Explorer that have an icon-driven interface for the user to click. Example, if an OS is a OS is a restaurant, the shell is the wait staff that serves the diners, and the kernel is the cook staff that prepares the diners' dinner requests.
As we see, you probably actually seen that in the movies and heard, oh, they've controlled my kernel or they have a hold of the kernel. The kernel is the one that is in full control, needs no security at all. This is a part of the OS where if you do become obviously in control of the kernel, you have obviously superseded any administrative rights. He is the one that interacts with the actual hardware and is talking in machine language, and the shell of the actual given OS is the one that's actually interpreting the human language to the kernel, so the kernel could then obviously continue to speak with whatever device you need to. You want to connect to the sound card, network card, all this is done and capable through the actual kernel. Any questions or doubts on the internal components of the OS? This is true for any OS, not just Windows. So you have four main categories. Your main categories are your server, your workstation, your mobile, and your cloud base. Alvarez, help me out here, please.
All right, operating system categories. These four broad OS categories define the use and function of both the operating system and the hardware. One, server allows for the sharing of info and applications by workstation OSs, optimized for background processes used for access by clients. Two, workstation allows end users to access info and applications on servers OSs as well as independently, optimized for foreground processes. Three, mobile. Found on mobile devices, generally optimized for touch-based devices where one program is used at a time. Four, cloud-based, a new breed of OS, considered stateless since personal data is not primarily stored on the device but in the cloud. Mobile and cloud-based OSs are similar except where their data is stored.
Thank you. As
Mhm.
we used to, the actual server ones are obviously for that. They're optimized and made to be able to provide services to the actual host on the actual network. Your workstation is predominantly made for the actual users to be able to use. And obviously, then you have the other ladder, which is the mobile and the cloud base. Anyone have any concerns in reference to the mobile cloud base or workstation? Right, let's proceed then. The next slide, which is the main functions of the actual S. It is to obviously provide the user an interface to be able to do their job. Without this interface, we're basically with nothing. We're not able to actual get sound. We're not able to even see video, do nothing without the actual interface that we have. The interface is the one that interprets everything that the kernel is actually providing to us, and it actually then the shell provides this to you as a graphical user interface. You have the capabilities of being able to, with ease, in a lot of these features, we're just accustomed to using. For instance, to be able to manage your files, you could go into the Windows Explorer or File Explorer or whatever name Explorer they decided to change its name to nowadays. And you're also able to manage applications. For those that are not used to these shell interfaces, or maybe they're used to Linux, they know that this is not an off-shell item. In other words, if you have Linux, it doesn't mean that you actually have a graphical user interface to be able to do file exploring and or being able to even manage your sound, video, all that would have to be done through a CLI to be able to even do this. You could actually install the actual file explorer or your desktop kind of graphical user interfaces to be able to facilitate and mimic a normal OS. Questions? All right. The most predominant use, as we know, for your OSs on a PC would be Windows OSs because of the fact that that is predominantly out there and they have taken a grasp of the enterprise world, and a lot of the people just believe that somehow it is easier to use. Obviously, the ones that are out there still out there are the OS for the actual Apple, and then you have the Linux one short right after that is Unix-based operating system, but that's really nor here nor there. Overall, your OSs for the OS X are usually used for predominantly on graphical editing, and high-end users usually use the actual Apple OS. But in a lot of the companies, since obviously Windows is much cheaper and it has a lot of the actual other features that people are accustomed to, a lot of the enterprise world rides their hats on the Microsoft Windows version.
Question, what's the other category?
What do you mean by other? Other would be, oh, I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying. Like Unix, you have
Oh,
also many other different OSs that are out there that are just custom made, for instance. But as for predominantly, the three major ones are your actual Microsoft Windows, the actual OS for your Apple, and then you have Linux, and then you have Unix. And within Linux and Unix, there is plenty of other off branches of those given operating systems. Since it
okay.
is open source, you can freely create whatever you want based on that first kernel. Any other questions? Thank you. So Windows versions, you have the Windows XP, which lasted a very long time, to the point that I believe Windows Millennium wasn't that right after, if I remember correctly, and we don't even mention it.
Yeah, Windows
That's how quick.
is just a problem.
For major issue as bad as Windows 98. Uh, for the purpose of this test, Windows 95, 98, 3.11, none of those are going to be tested. You do need to realize, obviously, and understand what is XP, Vista 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Supposedly 10 is the last version, and they're just going to keep that name and just keep on upgrading it from there. So you should have supposedly endless upgrades as long as your device can take it, obviously.
Hey, Diego.
Hmm. Yeah,
I think it's my turn.
amen. Showing up.
I'm going to let you continue to control the screen because you may go off screen to pull up some examples. That would be great.
Not fun.
As
You can
you,
move it though, right? You have control.
yeah,
All
I
right.
can.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I
If
can.
you hit forward, it should take you.
Okay.
It just takes a couple seconds for it to react. There you
All right. So I want to go back because I want everybody to see what um, this is. These are the OSs that we will be discussing for A plus. Like Diego said, Windows ME 95, maybe at some point, but not now. We won't be discussing those, and we'll talk about the intricacies of each one of these. You don't need to know the year it was out. We just want you to know this is that lineage of operating systems that were available. So Going too fast. Okay. Alvarez, if you'll read for me.
Yes, sir. Features of Microsoft operating systems. There are several features that are common for Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Others are different from one operating system to another. Some of the main features are 1. Desktop, 2. Explorer, 3. Support tools, 4. 32-bit versus 64-bit, 5. Security tools, 6. Event viewer, 7. Ready boost.
Thank you, sir. And we probably can venture back just by thinking about some of those recent operating systems and think about some of the features that we enjoyed about those. When I think about Windows Vista, is there some things that you saw on that operating system that you didn't see on others? What was one of the big things that you saw with Vista?
Vista had the did Vista have the arrow?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
there. And also, Vista had, if you saw number 7, the ability to use Ready Boost. What about Windows 8, 8.1? What made it different?
Metro tiles.
Yeah, it was that Charms picture. It made it look more like the mobile device, which was frowned upon as we come to find out because nobody really wanted to see that on their desktop. So I just, we think about, we go back to those older operating systems, we can easily remember some things that stuck out. Marcus, if you don't mind, if you're able to read this one for me.
Sure. Windows Desktop. The Windows Desktop is the primary tool provided by the Windows shell. It can be customized and configured to provide a more personalized environment. Desktop components include 1. Start menu / start screen, 2. Pinning or unpinning, 3. Gadgets, 4. Arrow, 5. Charms, 6. Taskbar and notification area, 7. Personalization.
Thank you, sir. We totally left out gadgets. Which operating system had gadgets that was rolled out to us? Do you guys remember that one? Or what the gadgets were?
The Windows phones.
Go back a little bit. We're talking about you remember the clock that just happened to be in the top right corner of that was located on operating systems, on a particular operating system. You had a clock, you had a calendar. It wasn't at the bottom in the notification area. It was actually
yeah. That kind of mirrored how it was on the phone because the clock was in the top left-hand corner
okay.
with the tiles.
That before widgets, like
That
widgets.
Yeah, we're going into that area, Marcus. But what operating system did that get rolled out?
That was Windows 8, no?
It was before.
I mean, like Windows 98?
No, sir. I'm talking
Windows
about
95.
Close. A
I'd
little
say
bit more
XP.
towards the future.
XP, is that what?
I thought it was Vista.
Yeah.
Oh, you know
I
what?
would
Yep,
say Vista,
Vista,
yeah.
because Vista probably had Charms.
Yep.
Because I know Charms was only for one version of Windows.
I thought Charm 8.
Charms was 8.
8 is the visual GUI that you see that mimics the phone, and they're called Charms. So let us get the lingo right. The widgets and the gadgets is more so the naming or the nomenclature for the clock, the calendar, and some of the other personalization things that you could do. So, but we'll get to it. I don't want to get people confused. I want to actually show it before we kind of talk about it. On this slide, you're able to point out some things that we can talk about. Like the arrow that Alvarez just mentioned is that translucent border across the top and the ability to actually peer into the other slides by turning it sideways, and you can just tap through and see all the different windows. That was a big arrow function. Yeah. We talked about the taskbar and the notification area, always there. Now, the start button on this is Windows Vista. As you see, you don't have that actual box next to it where you can type in. That came a little later, and to be present on the actual taskbar itself. So some of these things they got rolled out at a certain time, and they're very common for those particular operating systems. Here come Charms, Marcus. And they call it the Metro UI. Joseph, if you don't mind, sir, I'm gonna get you to read this one for me.
Yeah, and I want to defend Marcus. It was me that was wrong about Charms. Charms you could set up on Windows XP 7, but Charms came out with Windows 8.
Gotcha.
In both Windows 8 and 8.1, or the Charm bar, sorry. In both Windows 8 and 8.1, the user interface is different from earlier versions of Windows. The Start menu was removed and the desktop replaced with a new look called Metro UI. The look and feel of the desktop was designed to resemble that of a mobile device. And I will tell you guys, when I first got Windows 8, I was ready to throw my computer out the window before I figured out how to restart it.
That was a common consensus for that particular operating system. It did not have a good showing, and we get why in the try and the attempt, but it didn't come across really well for the community. So they got away from it pretty quickly.
Yeah, you needed a
Ahead of
touch
its time.
screen in order to actually navigate that pretty well. I was lucky enough to have a touch screen on my laptop at the time, but my mom trying to use that mouse to click to scroll across, she hated it. You definitely needed a touch screen for that.
It gave you, it would have been, it was probably optimized for that touch screen feel, Alvarez. So you're totally right about that. But this is something that's indicative of Windows 8, 8.1. Dave, was you about to say something? Okay.
I already did, but I'm not sure. Now I forgot what I said. You can always blame it on me.
All right, roll to Windows 10. The look is different, cleaner. As you can see now, you got your search on the outside. The start button looks different. You also, the look and feel is totally cleaner, probably a little more refined, but it's Windows 10. You got to get better as you grow up, right? So they gave you a more cleaner look here. So, and your desktop is not as busy. All right, we kind of talked about this, the start button. So look at the start button on the right. This is the, this is for Windows 7. And you can see how it actually shows up and everything. And I want you to notice these subtle differences, but the goal is to understand there's some bigger pieces at play as we go through these slides that we would need to be more aware of. But I do like the fact that they took the search out of the start and put it on the actual taskbar. Because why would I need to go to start then type in my search? That's an extra step that I don't want to do or shouldn't have to do. So, and the ability to pin and unpin, the most used items you typically will pin to your taskbar. I have several things pinned to the lower part of the taskbar, mainly my search engine. I got the This PC or my computer pinned to the bottom. I also have the snipping tool and Microsoft Word. You know, everybody have their own things that they will pin down there, and some things that will already be pinned down, like your file explorer will already be down there too. So, but quick mention, what is this? What are we looking at right now? What is this picture of? What operating system?
That's Windows 10, huh?
Windows 10. Quick way to see it because of the start menu. You don't have that's a quick way to catch it. If you look and blink and kind of squint your eyes, you might try to say it's 8, but no, it's not 8.
Look at all that bloatware that comes with it.
You know, when I sold computers, Marcus, one of the things we offered was to set the computer up, and you'll be surprised how much stuff we had to remove that wasn't pertinent. That
Yeah.
that came along with the computer to influence you to use other applications that you didn't have to use. So we actually had to remove a lot, and we got smart. We had a jump drive that was able to identify a lot of those things, and it ran its own functions to take care of that for us. So who we have here? Chris, gadgets, sir.
Mute. Okay, gadgets. Gadgets are mini programs that can be placed on the desktop. Windows 7, allowing them to run quickly and letting you personalize the PC, clock, weather, and so on. In 2011, Microsoft announced it is no longer supporting the development of or uploading of new gadgets.
Thank you. Anybody know why?
I want to say one thing though, even Windows 10, all the garbage that comes with it, some of it you just can't get rid of. It won't let you uninstall some of it.
Yeah, they got smart with it.
I think if
Go ahead, Alvarez.
you had too many gadgets running, didn't it like wear down your performance?
You can always stop it, but as far as like Chris saying to actually physically take it off of the computer, that can be a little tedious at times. They have made ways to make that a little, but you can always go to the startup and make it so it doesn't launch and things of that nature. But some things is not as easy to remove like it was with XP and Vista and some of those earlier operating systems, because we would dump a lot of stuff.
Did they stop supporting gadgets for a security issue for not being able to keep up with them?
That's it.
Yes, because the sidebar, which you loaded them from, I believe, had lots of vulnerabilities. People are always cracking it. Every time in my Black Hat meetings, that's all they talked about for hours.
It was known that was a very easy opportunity to exploit. So yes, Marcus, and like Joseph said, they figured it out and they said it wasn't necessary, because if anything, it's an aesthetic thing. Your clock and your calendar don't have to be up there. You have access to it in other places. So why allow yourself to be open for exploitation? And all these other things could be put in applications or other parts of your computer. You can have an application that run your calendar or your stock and anything that you see up there. So, but it was brought along with Windows 7. Let's see here. And we talked about Arrow. And like I said, it's that clear, translucent, that ability to look behind the actual window that's in front of it. And it was available on all of the editions except Starter. Anybody can probably tell me easily why this wouldn't be available on Starter. I'm hoping somebody will mention it.
I mean, because it was a really minimized version of Windows 7.
It's a very stripped down version of Windows 7, and it probably wouldn't perform it in a way that would make it worthwhile having it on it. It may even made it harder to run because of, I would say, there will be some computations that's needed to make sure that this can happen and looks very seamless and look really good. Starter didn't have the ability to do that. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I think it was just because it was an added feature that Microsoft put on there that looked cool, and they wanted people who used it to pay for it.
Anybody recognize this start bar? What start bar is this?
Windows 7.
I believe that's XP.
Looks like XP.
Okay.
Okay.
Go back far enough.
Faison, if you don't mind, sir, I'm gonna get you to read this one.
The taskbar is one of the few items that has been a staple for Windows environment through every version. It provides a way to access the start menu, shows programs that are running, gives quick access for opening pinned programs, and a notification area. The notification area or system tray is where the day/time can be seen, and the system tray contains pertinent information such as battery life. network connection status, volume control, and printer status.
Thank you, sir. What else is in that system tray that I want to talk about? Give me one more thing that you could easily find in that system tray when you need access to it. We use these things a lot now, so it's there to give us opportunity to easily, I don't want to say it, but it's something.
The eject?
Yes, that's it. You were reading my mind, Marcus. The actual quickly remove those external USB devices that you have. Also, if it didn't say it, I don't think it said, another thing is typically down there as well is your antivirus software will be over there too. That's typically housed in that notification area. All right. Alimu, just the sentence there. I'm gonna get you to read it for me.
Windows desktop personalization. Personalization of the desktop can be accessed through the control panel applet personalization or by right-clicking the desktop and choosing personalization.
Thank you, sir. And this is Windows 7 again. Just trying to give you an opportunity to make your PC unique. So I applaud it, but there's so many things we can do now to try to address that. Kimberly, just take the black wording parts to read, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Windows Explorer, by clicking on the icon that looks like a file folder on the taskbar, the Windows Explorer is accessed. It provides a hierarchical structure of files, folders, libraries, and drives. The file location bar at the top will show the file folder path located on the drive specified like how a browser looks. A library is centralized location to manage files from multiple locations. By default, Windows 7 has 4 standard libraries: documents, music, pictures, and videos. Libraries can be created, accessed, and manipulated here for a more personalized method to access folders, files that are frequently used.
Thank you, ma'am. I want people to understand the power and the importance of both of those. Your Windows Explorer, like I said, it allows you to see everything at a kind of with a vantage point where you can actually get to those files very, very quickly. But the library is even more important. You can manage files from multiple locations using the library. And I think, Diego, correct me if I'm wrong, last class we had a little hiccup on the way that the library works. But know that Windows 7 has 4. We just talked about those, but you could go to the library to find things and it can be located in different places. So that's the uniqueness of the library.
Is that set in stone for the test, that if they ask how many libraries, does it default to, we say 4 or no?
That is the user's profile itself. And usually you have, back in the days, it used to be called My Documents, for instance, My Pictures, My Videos, or My Music. Those are the basic folders that you have as a user in Windows. And yes, as for the shortcut for libraries, the default ones in are now just called Documents, Music, Pictures, and Videos. As you can see in, I think still in all Windows nowadays, you'll be able to see that with ease.
And yes, Marcus, that's law. It's going to be those 4 libraries. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And here he is. This is the quick access, cannot be confused with the new library. But if you'll notice, now it's here, it's just called this PC here. But I have my documents, my downloads, my music, my pictures, my videos. Quick access is the new one to be able to go ahead and create whatever you want and folders for quick access. But these are my folders. So if somebody else logs in and they click on documents, it'll take them to their documents. Back to you in our previous program.
All right. Ronald, sir.
File structures. Users are authenticated through a user account, which will then provide their computer settings called a user profile. The set of files and directories in each user profile will be specific to the user, while system files will be the same from user profile to user profile. General file information. File naming. There are two parts to a file name. The main part, which identifies the content of the file, and the extension, identify the file type. File type names have a maximum allowed characters of 255, which includes spaces. Special characters not allowed includes all those. File extension. This is what tells the operating system what type of file it is, so that the associated program will open it. It is the last character. But yeah, is the last characters following the period in a file name, such as .docx, .exe, .zip, or .text. The path. This is where the file lives in a directory. An example, your C drive users, username, desktop, A+, PowerPoints, and lessons T-32 . That would be a PowerPoint text.
That it. Thank you, Ronald. Did anybody know that it was 255 characters of what you could type before you run out? I didn't. Let's say it's not important though, because I don't think anybody asking for 255.
You'll be surprised when you run into that issue.
Have you ran into it before, Diego?
Oh yes, because of the fact that you look at the example. So you see the example on the bottom where it says C users, username, desktop, A+, power, that counts against it.
Interesting. Well, okay.
The file extension and everything with the name counts against you. So people become very creative and create 500 different subfolders, and their names on these files are enormous, to say the least. So what happens is, for some stupid reason and great feature, Windows allows you to save the file. But when you try to copy that user's profile over to the next computer,
no bueno.
It doesn't work.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a big part of this too. When you work in a system and you are a part of the Active Directory, the ability to go from one PC to another using your account and having your information available, because it accesses it off of the directory. So your PC follows you as long as you're a part of that directory and you have your correct username and password. So I can go from a PC
roaming profile, yeah.
Your roaming profile. If I wanted to go the front desk to log in, if I can get into that PC, everything that I'm used to having as far as information, I should have access to, unless I'm doing some type of shared drive thing and it just wouldn't allow me to take that with me. But that is something that you would want to know. But the system files will remain the same, meaning the PC system files that's on all of them will still be there, but your information will be able to travel, like Diego just said, the roaming file. So the roaming account, if you have that. So
profile, yeah, roaming profile. I misunderstood you. The roaming profile, let me rephrase what I was trying to explain, is the one where you sign into any computer and it will bring your exact same profile ID information that is stored over there. It was one of the similar to what we would consider nowadays a cloud-based kind of thing, where no matter where you went, all of your documents, everything was there. So if I logged in to the front desk and logged in the warehouse, the exact same profile with everything would actually be on that PC, usually used on what they consider the thin clients. Now, what you were saying was obviously if you are in an Active Directory, then yes, your profile will be able to access, if you're allowed to,
Yeah.
access your other profile on another computer.
Right.
Not always, though, because sometimes some of these enterprises do not allow regular users to access profiles over the network, even if it's their own.
Yeah.
You
That's
got
how we used to be able to work at from one AT&T store to another. We'd just log into Windows because we had thin clients in the stores, and you just log in and then you wait for it to download your profile, and then it was just like you was at your last store.
It's I think that's a neat benefit because a lot of times when you go from another to, for what we would do in our industry, you can sometimes need some things that's on your PC or on your profile to perform whatever service that you're bringing into this new department. So it's good to really have that benefit to have it, because once again, a lot of these industries don't allow any USB to just be plugged in to do anything because of the issues that can come from that. So, and the one thing I did have to learn to do was I would have to type out my file, $ shared drive. I would have to type it out to the T to access it sometime because it wouldn't allow it just to come up, be available on that PC. So that was fun trying to remember that, that whole file name. Directories. Let's see. David, if you don't mind, sir.
Okay. Directories give a hierarchical view of folders and files specified on the different drives available for that system. It is a method to organize the files in a meaningful way and can be found in the Windows Explorer window. A folder that contains other files and folders located within a directory is a subdirectory.
Thank you kindly, sir. And Kimberly spoke about this a little earlier, but in this PC, when you go there and you get to this page, you're able to see all of the information on those drives, on those particular drives. If you click on each one, you'll be able to see everything that's located on those drives. So the whole purpose of directories is to clean it up and make it easily accessible so you can find what you're looking for. Ideally, you would save things where they should be saved. You save all your documents in documents and all of your pictures in pictures and things. If you do that, you really help your computer out and yourself out. I must say, I don't always do that. I do save a lot of stuff to the desktop that I want to bring to the class or have available really quickly. And somebody frowns upon that within this particular class right now. That would be Diego. He's not a big fan of that. So, but I do it. It helps. It's like, it's on the desktop. I got to find it on the desktop. OneDrive.
Can I ask a question about that real quick, Marvin?
Go ahead, sir.
So I remember one time someone helping me with my computer and I had like 100 things on my desktop, and they said that it was more resource intensive for my computer to click on things that were on the desktop rather than if I just left them in their default directory. Does it matter where they're stored in terms of how they're retrieved and shown to you? I mean, I know it depends on if it's an app on the desktop versus a document, but I didn't know, does the file path or directory have anything to do with how quickly it can be opened or accessed?
I I will default to Diego, but
Yeah,
my
that guy was just messing with you.
I'm about to say my first thought. Yeah,
You probably were in a enterprise location where it is a must to put it into your document. What is happening here is that, unfortunately or fortunately, migration tools are out there to be able to facilitate the process of when PC lifecycle happens. Now I can swap your computer in with another one. If you do not put your information into the correct directory and you use your desktop as a folder, you have a very highly good chance that your information is not going to be backed up and migrated to the correct spot. Desktop usually is not part of the migration. And if you do a different folder that's not your user's folder, you got a 99.999 chance that, again, IT is coming using automated tools and they're not going to catch that extra folder that you created on the C drive. Hence, usually they also don't allow users, regular users, to use regular other folders besides the user's folder.
So that was that's what I'm glad that Diego said it that way. It's even though it's your PC, even if you were getting help with it, it's a lot easier for anybody to perform those tasks if everything is where it should be. Because like Diego said, if it's on a desktop and you're trying to pull things and put them in onto a drive or anything of that nature, there's some extra steps that's going to be at place, and it's not as automated as text would like. So there's the ideal way to do it, and then there's the way that people tend to do it. So it's more ideal to have it in those places.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir. Ms. King, can you read this for me?
Windows Explorer may also list OneDrive as if it is an internal drive. OneDrive is a cloud-based storage feature proprietary from Microsoft where users can store files to allow more space on a hard drive.
Thank you, ma'am. Has anyone had any issues with OneDrive?
Yes.
What's your gripe? Your current gripe?
Not enough space.
Always. But I think, Diego, if we know why, right? That's the game right now. So it's one of those things where, truth be told, as media becomes smaller and smaller as far as like external, you want access to things on your device. I totally get it. But if you could have it available locally, it's cool to have it and not have to use it for cloud. But am I correct, Diego or Inatez, by saying once you set it up, what goes to the cloud is based on the settings that you have set up for it, correct? Like you can tell it not to send these items to the cloud.
You can not log on and it won't sync. If that's your question.
Okay. So it's happening regardless.
OneDrive.
I think he's talking about file types. Like you can say only sync music, only sync pictures,
or don't sync those, because
documents.
I would feel like you don't have to sync those. I don't need those. Like exactly, Kelly. That's why I was getting at. Like, can I differentiate the things that I want actually synced, even once I log in? I can make that setting available right off.
I would, to tell you the truth, if you can actually choose what type of files, I think you could choose if you're gonna sync or not.
Okay.
I don't know if you can choose type of files to sync. You're saying like similar to Apple and
yes.
to.
I would love to be able to not have to worry about syncing the things that don't mean music and pictures. I don't need that sync. I don't want that taking up my 3 gigs of cloud space, because I feel like I can have access to that locally and that's where I want it. But maybe my calendar, contacts, things of that nature, I would want that sync often because I'm changing it often. I would hope it's a way to circumvent it being your actual storage running out. That's the goal. That was what I was getting at. I hope that at this point we can get to that place where we can not have to worry about that. But it's always running. My OneDrive runs, and then when my battery dies, that's when it stopped trying to actively sync. So it's an ongoing thing with this new PC, and that is a gripe of mine as well.
I took that off.
Oh, sorry.
My gripe
Right.
was that they took storage away from the original people. I was one of the first people to sign up for it, and through various programs, I was able to acquire, I think if I'm not mistaken, like 200 gigs of storage. And then about 5 years later, all of a sudden they say, oh, well, everybody only going to get, I forget how many it is now. It's minimal. So they're like, okay, well, you need to take your stuff off. And I say, nope, I'm not. It's still there. They got to hold it. They can't erase it, but I can't add nothing on. So.
Well, you lucked out.
Well, you're lucky. You got
really
grandfathered in and were able to.
So once you move it, after it's gone,
the files, they're gonna take the space back.
They will. So you gotta be careful. If I can get someone to read.
Can I ask about the cloud?
Go ahead, sir.
Please.
So if I'm working on a document that I have saved to OneDrive, is it constantly every single letter and every single space I do on my computer? Is it constantly sending it back and forth to update within OneDrive and on my desktop?
Just like if you were using the Google Docs or the Google Excel sheet, exact same thing is happening. It is constantly syncing. When you're doing the auto sync with OneDrive, you turn it off, but if you turn it off, then it's going to ask you to actually save it to your physical drive, hence turning off the actual OneDrive feature.
Okay.
So that is, as he said, intensive there, because as you're typing and everything is syncing.
Pros and cons with that, Marcus, because I can honestly say I had Diego asked me to do something, require me to use an Excel. On my PC, I have Windows, Microsoft 2007, but because I'm with the organization, we have Microsoft, the bundle. So I luckily used the bundle because I didn't save it to my desktop. So when I started to look for it again, I'm looking through my Microsoft suite that I have, the 2007. See how long ago that is. I couldn't find it. And then I like, please be on the cloud. And it was. So it has its benefits. So I think I'm a fan, but in the same breath, I mean, it's kind of cumbersome. I feel like it needs to be finessed a little bit better so we could make sure that we're getting what we want the most out of the OneDrive is what I'm getting at. Kareem, if you don't mind, sir.
Changing Explorer settings. The toolbar in Windows Explorer contains many options located in the Organize tab, including changing the layout and folder and search options. The folder and search option has 3 tabs: General, View, and Search. General allows changing from double-clicking a file to open it to a single click and changing the navigation pane and how browsing folders should appear. View. This tab has advanced settings, specifically related files and folders and how they appear, including showing hidden files and folders. There is also an option to reset the default settings. Search. Search gives specific to how a user wants to search for a file or folder.
And basically this is similar to like personalization. You could use this to exercise how you want your Explorer to work. So you have some options there to address. I guess to each his own. I have yet to touch how it's laid out. I just use it how it comes. So
this is where you can turn on view file extensions, which is very useful.
That is true. And that may be necessary in the industry, but also just necessary to know some of the extensions that you're working with. Chris, this is going to be yours since you spoke. Appreciate it.
Problem. Managing files and folders. Creating and changing file or folder attributes can be accomplished by right-clicking the file and choosing Properties from the dialog box. From the General tab, under Properties, changes can be made to the file's name, which program opens the file, and attributes to make the file read-only or hidden. This dialog box also shows the file's path in the directory, the size of the file, and when it was created, modified, and last accessed.
Thank you, sir. Actually, this is just more information about those files. 1 o'clock, I think I hear the ice cream truck.
I think I hear him. He's on time today.
Get back up. I'm gonna go to this next slide. Okay. If I can get Mr. Alvarez, if you don't mind, sir.
All right, managing files and folders. The security tab assigns permissions to specific groups or users and designates who has access to edit, modify, view, read, and write. Under the details tab, more information related to the file with an option to remove personal information will be, excuse me. Under the details tab, more information related to the file with an option to remove personal information from the specified file. The previous versions tab is used when restore has been enabled to recover a file in the event of accidental deletion. Temporary files can use system resources when they are not deleted regularly. They are written constantly to hold data for a short time, but can stay until deletion. Disk cleanup can be a useful tool here for removal.
Thank you, sir. So you're just now looking at ways to have opportunities to try to pull up files that may have become deleted accidentally. And also with that security tab, you're able to see who has the ability to address this and what permissions they have set. As you see down below, if you got full control, that means you can do everything. And some people can just read. Some people won't have the option to do everything. So it will give you those permissions in that area as well. The worst thing to do is have a hard drive and you don't remember the password and you go and use it as a slave externally and you try to get in there through other means and you're noticing that everything is just read or you can't do anything to it. So that's a sad day, but there's ways around that too. Windows support tools overview. Just because of some things, I'll read this one. Current versions of Windows only have the support tools available through downloading either from the installation disk or through Microsoft's website. A list of helpful tools to download include, you got planning tools, Windows 7 Upgrade Advisor, that's something that we use a lot. You got deployment tools, the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, used a lot in industry when you're doing remote deployments. You have management tools here and performance tools. Some of these may already be available on your device, but you have access to do that through Windows. Microsoft. Nobody has installation disk anymore. All right, Windows XP, virtual XP mode. If I can get Alimu, sir, if you will read for me. About to get to the grid of this.
Virtual XP mode. Included with Windows 7 Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate, as well as Windows 8, is the ability to run applications in Windows XP mode, XPM. This is a virtual client, emulating Windows XP Professional with Service Pack 3, which requires that you download and install Windows Virtual PC. a minimum of 2 GB RAM and 15 GB hard drive space for each virtual Windows instance.
Thank you, sir. If you saw this, Windows 7 and Windows 8. With Windows 7, Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate is the only ones that can do it, and Windows 8 can do it as well. Home cannot do this. That's something that you need to catch when we're showing things like this. Home is not an option available to do this. But if you notice the minimum requirements, 2 gigs of RAM and 15 gigs hard drive space, those are the minimums will be very important as we continue to go along. I didn't have Windows 7 Professional, so I didn't even notice this as something that was available. But what's another way to run? This is just sidebar. Another way to run applications on a newer Windows OS that's not for that particular OS. What can you do? Where do you go? How do you address that?
Run an emulator?
You can, there's a compatibility tab that you can access to run older application on a newer PC. Diego, can you pull that up quickly? I put you on the spot. If you're able to pull it up quickly. If not, I can
pull up a who?
The compatibility tab that should be on
Okay.
most file folders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this was a workaround to be able to run some items that wasn't it wasn't for your operating system.
Of course, gonna go real quickly. Go here. Stop. Stop. It's not gonna stop, is it? It's gonna annoy the living daylights out of me until. Let me try that. Here's compatibility.
Thank you, sir.
That the guy you're talking about?
It is. And if he clicked on compatibility mode, and you can run that program as one of the earlier versions. So that was a way to get around running certain applications if you didn't have the newer, if it was an older application that didn't have an upgrade for it, that's how you could get around it. So, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't have Windows 7 Professional, so I didn't know about the virtual XP mode, but this is a way to address that using a virtual client, which is kind of neat, I think. Thank you, sir.
Cool.
Windows Easy Transfer. Faison.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marvin, was the XP mode meant solely for compatibility? Is that why it came with that? Or what was the point of the virtual XP mode?
I feel like this was, yes, Marcus.
The virtual XP mode, you're saying? What was the purpose of it?
Yeah, if not for compatibility like we just showed on your computer.
It's mainly, yes, for that, for those programs who have not been sunset or obviously updated, and unfortunately they are still vital to the actual business itself. And unfortunately now, Windows XP was no longer being supported. And since a lot of these companies refuse to migrate, the solution Windows came up with was this, that you could actually go ahead and boot up into Windows XP mode per se and run whatever you needed to run within that mode.
because I would hope that everybody would agree with me that Windows XP was one solid operating system.
Yep.
I would even say it was the best one that they made, but that's me.
Oh no, that's not you. That's me too.
And if it was really solid on a enterprise level, Marcus, who wants to move away from it just because of powers that be is saying that they don't want to continue to bring any updates to it, especially if it's in a closed environment, possibly. So this allowed them to continue that process. I appreciate Diego. I felt like that was the answer, but thanks for clearing it up for me. Did they help you, Marcus?
Yeah, and that makes sense why it wouldn't be on the edition. So, okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Who haven't I bothered in a while? Anybody wants to read? I'm starting to lose sight of who's all in here. Let's see.
I'll read it because I feel like you're leaving me out.
Hey, Joseph. Thank you, sir. Go for it.
Yep. Windows Easy Transfer. This feature can be used to migrate a few accounts from Windows Vista to Windows 7 or Windows 7 to Windows 8, 8.1. However, to migrate to Windows 10, you must use the User State Migration Tool, USMT. Both utilities transfer the accounts, folders, and files and settings of the user.
Thank you, sir. Look at the variants of the two. Wet is used for 7, Vista to 7, 7 to 8, and to go from 7, 8 to 10, you have to use the USMT, and there is a application that's there on your system for that purpose.
You'll see there though, what is the thing that is saying on that last sentence? Back to somebody's previous question earlier today, you'll notice that the transfer utility is going to transfer the user's account, folders and files and settings, which gives the false impression that your desktop's coming with me. Your desktop's not coming with me. Only your files and folders under your user's documents will come.
That's why you don't.
And some of these, and some of these beautiful tools, sometimes, not always, will not even bring your pictures or videos or music. Because obviously they're not meant to bring that in the corporate world. I can care less, unless if you're marketing, obviously, why you have videos, pictures on your computer. That's usually not a must.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it too, Joe. System Restore, a very big friend of ours. Here we go. K Dunn, if you're able to see, I'm going to get you to read this one for me.
System Restore appears in Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. It allows you to restore the system to a previous point in time. To create a restore point, you should access the System Protection tab on the System Property Dialog box.
Thank you, ma'am. And System Restore typically actually create restore points without even you being involved. If you add a different application to your OS or to your PC, it'll create a restore point. Or if there's some type of significant change or at a particular time interval, it will do it. But if you know that you need it done and you want it done, some people will do it prior to making certain changes too, just in case. So I really do. Go ahead, Dale.
Sorry, question. Is this the same as a backup?
That's what I was going to ask. It's like a system image disk backup or no?
I don't think it's a backup. It's just a restore point. It goes back to an instance in the past beyond what you've done from that restore point recently. So in case the program you're installing is bad or it crashes your system, You can go back, like rewind in time, go back in the, to the restore point, and it's like nothing ever happened.
And you'll notice he even says it in his title, System Restore. Restore system files and settings in big letters. That's exactly the first title it says. Therefore, your personal files and everything that's in there, it will not be touched, which is a great feature, because if you messed up anything and you don't want to delete your actual physical Excel sheets and whatever you're working on, this will bring you back in time to your system files and settings. But if your system goes down and you try to restore to this, you good luck if you thought you had a backup of your data, because if you thought you had a backup, it's not a backup of data, just the system files. Similar, I think the other name was Snapshot in Linux, is it? Or in virtual machines, I forgot the name.
In virtual machine, yeah, Snapshot.
Yeah, Snapshot. Similar to Snapshot, which is just current settings of where you are. I think, yeah, even Linux, I think that's what it's called. I think it's called Snapshot. I could be wrong. I may be crazy.
Got many methods. That's the thing about Linux. There's too many to even speak of. Many flavors. You pick the flavor you like.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you
Sorry
if you're
about that.
really comfortable in that area, that's a very convenient and we like to say robust way to move in that space. So I want to be more proficient in Linux myself. All right, 64-bit versus 32-bit versus 64-bit. I think you all remember when I showed the picture of my desktop running a 32-bit Windows 7 on a system that's very capable of running 64-bit. And most of you frown upon that. And hey, I do too. So I'm going to address it very soon. I've been eyeing, is Jose in here? I've been eyeing ways to address that legally, Jose, so I can get a 64-bit Windows 10. So don't talk to me about the means that you have, sir. I'm going to get someone to read. Kimberly, if you will, for me, ma'am.
64,
Oh,
I mean,
Linux.
sorry, 32-bit and 64-bit is the determinant for the amount of data the processor CPU can process effectively. To run a 64-bit version of the operating system, a 64-bit processor must be part of the system architecture, and in most cases, it can also run 32-bit versions. If the system architecture is 32-bit, it will not run 64-bit operating system or application programs. Another difference between 32-bit and 64-bit is in how much memory it can recognize and use. 32-bit systems can only use up to 4 gigabytes of memory, and installing anything more will go unused and unrecognized. The basic information about the computer is shown in the system applet in the control panel. It shows what version of OS is installed, as well as the computer name, activation status, and system index rating.
Thank you, ma'am. In that same system applet, do you guys remember that score that it would give you to say, hey, your computer is a 4.9, whatever, trying to let you know with the RAM and the operating system and the processor where it scores your system? I used to think that was kind of messed up because I never had a really, really good score, but I thought my computer was good, but it never showed up in the score. So we've talked about this. This is kind of something that we know about. The way that you communicate with 32-bit versus 64-bit, the ability to speak that language and how how much more effective 64-bit OSs are. But keep in mind, because of that, you can even get more RAM out of it. That 4 gigs is all that the 32-bit can actually see. So even when you have more, like I have more, it's not useful. It's not being recognized or being used because that's all that it can actually see. So that's another way to improve on your system. If it's capable of handling 64, it should be 64. Security / Action Center. Muhammad, if you are available, sir, I'm going to get you to read just the top part of it here.
Security Action Center. The Action Center is the inside control panel or can also have access from a notification area by clicking on the flag in the system tray. This feature was first seen in Vista Windows Security Center and was renamed in Windows 7. The Action Center is included in all current version and its main function is to inform Hennessy the flag when there is a security or maintenance issue.
Thank you, sir. Who goes to the Action Center? Has anyone just went there just for giggles and fun? Typically, you receive something from the center. You typically don't just navigate there, but knowing that you have built-in processes to help make your operating system secure, it's nice. Would you just lead on this rely on it by itself? If you're doing things, I'm not a big fan of just relying on that, knowing that how most people would tend to want to try to do nefarious things with the Windows operating system. I would suggest some type of malware, anti-malware. I'm sorry. No, I don't want you to get something bad on me. Anti-malware software to address that. But it's there. And like Muhammad said, it started with Windows Vista and it was called Windows Security System, big thing. And now in Windows 7 and on, it's the Action Center.
Is Action Center, I thought that was, I have Windows 10 on the far right. I've seen when you click and it shows you your notifications.
Yep.
But that's not with security, that's Windows Defender. So is
Windows Action Center is gonna give you something to do. That's the little flag. Windows Defender is the actual firewall / anti-malware that's inside Windows 10.
You make that flag come up by typing security and maintenance, Marcus. If you type in security and maintenance, that flag will pop up. And like Diego said, that Windows Defender is running. That's another leg of it. But security and maintenance will allow your flag to that you see here to pop up.
So if that little flag shows up, it's going to be telling you to do something which pertains to this given area.
Exactly.
So that's just letting you know something's up. You need to attend to it.
Oh man, this brings back memories too. Ronald. If you don't mind.
All right, so Security Center. Rolled into the Action Center in Windows 7, the Security Center interface shows the status of and allows you to configure the firewall, Windows Update, virus protection, spyware, and unwanted software protection, internet security, settings, UAC, and network access protection.
And what is UAC, people?
That means user access control.
There you go. User access, user accounts. I think it's user account, Joe.
User account, yeah.
Yeah, user account control. Okay. Just another built-in function from Microsoft, from Windows, that's trying to do its part. There's only so much it can do, but I do like that in this space, you have the ability to turn on your automatic updates and actually set it, and you can see if your firewall is turned on and off. You get to at least have a centralized place to address a lot of security issues. So if you didn't know or didn't have it, this is the place that you would go to confirm these things were there. Windows 7 Security Center. All right, we just talked about this user account control. I read this one, a little quick. The UAC is intended to prevent unintentional or unauthorized changes to the computer by either prompting for permission to continue or requiring an admin password before continuing. Changes to this from Windows 7 allow you better control on how strict the UAC intercedes. Now, if anybody ever used Windows 7, this popped up almost all the time, to the point that it popped up too much. Did you guys recall that or remember that? Like anytime you tried to do anything, it would say, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" It was kind of annoying. And you can address it. There's ways to, like you just said, manipulate that or take that back. But it was, see, it says it there, change when these notifications appear. But if you didn't, it will pop up all the time. Windows, this was their way of trying to address those issues. But most people would just turn it off because they saw it too much.
That's what I did.
Yeah, you eventually turn it off. So I kind of see why. Alvarez, you'll read this one for me, sir.
All right, security, Windows Firewall. Windows Firewall, renamed Windows Defender Firewall in Windows 10, can be used to stop incoming and outgoing traffic. It was first implemented in Windows Vista and has been in all versions since. In advanced settings, there may be rules, policies, and monitor settings available.
Thank you, sir. Diego, I haven't played around with my Windows Firewall. I just know that it's on, but I also have other antivirus that I've got running. Is there anything that sticks out in this area that I should mention besides what's been given?
Well, yeah, I mean, now that's about it. It just moved locations.
That's why I wanted.
As long as we understand what the Windows firewall is, it is a software-based firewall that you can configure on your actual Windows PC and control anything. If you have problems, for instance, gaming, and you're having a lot of issues connecting maybe to the online services of whatever game, check your Windows firewall. Maybe the application and or the ports necessary are either blocked or not even added at all.
Gotcha.
So that would be obviously impeding you from doing anything.
Reminds me when you put your security too much on your router. That too.
Yeah, funny. That was great, actually. I upped the firewall features in my router. Luckily, I had just recently changed my password, and I remember what the password was. Although you could actually do everything you needed, my son at night was unable to actually go gaming. He was able to get into Xbox Live, but he wasn't able to get into any of the games. But he was lucky that I was still here, and something went ding, 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 and it wasn't in the weekend, where I would have probably erased everything from my brain, and then God only knows what would happen. So firewalls are very tricky. Make sure you know exactly what settings you are, because the default settings of letting it control it by itself, which usually what is in there, pretty much blocks almost everything.
You was able to address it though?
For it back to They lower
Gotcha.
security.
Kareem, if you talking down there, go ahead and say what you just said.
So basically I heard with basically if you have like multiple antivirus and spyware protection, I heard it usually cancel each other out and viruses can get through. It's so I've heard, I'm not sure how true that is, but if you just have Windows Defender, I just suggest just keeping that enabled and use that instead of having like McAfee and different ones. Because if you have multiple enabled, you know, somebody's going to cancel each other out and viruses can get through.
It's not
Well,
so much that
that
they
is
cancel
very
each other out,
true.
but they fight with each other. Like
They
one
fight
will
with
think
each
the other is a virus.
Correct.
Yeah.
What-
And Windows
that's-
Defender will obviously give courtesy
Yeah,
to
that's it.
any other anti-malware. It is in there because of the fact that Windows wants to jump into the bandwagon, just like they did with the Internet Explorer to get rid of Netscape. They created Windows Defender to get rid of the other malwares that are out there. At the same time, to avoid the humongous battle that they have or had with Internet Explorer, where they integrated it completely with the OS. In this case, the OS will give courtesy and say, oh, you have such and such installed. I will keep mine turned off and I'll keep my eye on him. As soon as I see that he's not getting updated, then the action center is going to be notified that that is not updated. But it obviously it itself turns itself off to allow the actual antivirus. But unfortunately, if you do install various anti-malware, antivirus, they will not only compete with resources, if you even get them to work and become friends, they're eating up your resources like a mother because anti-malware A is checking the file you just downloaded. Anti-malware B just checked your file. Oh, you just changed it. Anti-malware A, anti-malware. You can see it's going to become very labor intensive, even if you get with each other and somehow.
Yeah, look at my situation. It crashes my computer once a week. I have a lot of experience with using 2 or 3 anti-malwares, and I did it for fun after I learned it was the wrong thing to do. I wouldn't say it's exactly wrong, depends on what you're doing, but the best practice is one will do. That's the best practice.
Kareem, I'm going to get you to read this, but also to piggyback off of what Diego and Laz just said, with internet, with Xfinity, Norton's was free, and I was able to download it on my phone and on my device. Do you frown upon that, Diego? Probably do, but let me finish.
What? They're no longer giving it.
Right, they're no longer giving it.
Xfinity is giving you 6 months free, and since now they have integrated NIPS into their service, they no longer require to give you and pay anybody else. So they upgraded their network with NIPS, and now no longer do they require anybody else to do that job. NIPS, I don't think we covered in here, is Network Intrusion Prevention System, which basically monitors the network and prevents any malicious activities.
Yeah, we just hit that just now in this last one. We left them with AT&T, and so as a courtesy, they extended Norton's for X amount of months until we decided to pay for it on our own. It literally said, Kareem, hey, you have Norton's and it's about to expire. Once it expires, Windows Defender will take over. Like it mentioned it in the thing, like once you lose it and we notice that it expires, we'll take over. So that is something that will happen. It's when you have Norton's along with McAfee or with the company like Kaspersky or Webroot, SpySweep or something. If you have two of different, not one and Windows Defender, because Windows Defender is going to back out and say, hey, you got it. We'll come back in when you get tired or when you expire. If I get you to read this one for me, sir.
Yes. Free anti-malware program included Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. Originally an anti-spyware program in Windows 8, it was upgraded to include antivirus as well.
I'd say anything is better than nothing, but I do feel like just for peace of mind, you would want to have something that you have running. I remember when AVASC was really big. I don't know if that's still something that we use. Last, is that still something that's
Oh yeah, AVG is still being used
Yeah.
like crazy.
Yeah, okay. And they normally keep up with their the downloads or updates for their virus types and stuff. So that's I think that was free.
Yeah, usually they're pretty good, and
Yeah,
they're sometimes even ahead and in front of Nortel, Norton, and
McAfee.
yeah, McAfee.
You guys know about McAfee, the guy? Anybody? You guys?
I say McAfee. It's McAfee.
Yeah, he's a wild man. I didn't know if you know his history. If you have time, Google him. He's a trip. Chris caught it. Let's see. Yeah, Ronald, have I bothered you in a while? Just the top, the black part for me, sir.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Event viewer, comprehensive error and information log viewing feature. The event viewer can track events when logged into an administrator account. These log files can give a general indication of a Windows computer health.
Thank you, sir. Very powerful tool if you have the ability to access it. If there was any significant disruption to a PC, you can always check the event viewer to see what's going on. This can even help when you're dealing with a client or a customer who can't explain the issue that they're having. If you have the ability to check the event viewer, you can get a lot of information about what happened and possibly ways to resolve that issue. So event viewer is really, really, really good, a really great tool to have if you have the ability to access it. That's been the issue at times, especially the PC is down, you can't get to it. But if you can get to it, this can really help you.
Can I add something real quick?
Go for it, Joe.
On the event viewer, especially with servers, if you get like alerts, like overheating alerts or something, with event viewer, you can tell how many times a computer is rebooted. If you have, if you know the difference, see on the right, the event ID, all these different events that happen on computers have an exact ID. I think like a reboot is like 661 or something like that. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but there's specific events for specific things. And like an Active Directory, you can tell who signed into a computer at what time. You can tell for specific programs that have event logging, you can tell when somebody logged into an application or when somebody started an application. You can tell specific times on so many things in the event viewer. And over here, there's a lot of different things on the, I'm moving my mouse and you guys can't see it. On the left side under Windows logs, application log, security log, the setup log, system log, forwarded events. You can tell all different kinds of things once you get used to looking at it. Like you said, see down here on the bottom, there's a blue link or a purple link, whatever. That's where you get additional information that can help you. I mean, it's obviously not going to do a lot of help if it's proprietary software. But if you get used to looking at this, you can solve a lot of issues that make kind of no sense. That's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate that, Joe, and it makes a lot of sense. As stated, you don't always have to just go here for errors. You have a lot of information that's available here, so you can get in front of things or just want to address things. So I think people should get comfortable with using an event viewer and understanding the power that it entails. Appreciate that, Joe. Ready Boost. I talked about this. Ready Boost. It makes me excited because I've used it, but to be honest with you, I couldn't tell if it got any better or not. I don't know. David, if you'll read this one for me, sir.
Ready Boost. This feature, available in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10, allows you to use free space on a removable drive to speed up a system by caching content and is used when you are running low on available memory. In Windows 7, it can work with a USB drive, flash memory, SD card, or a compact flash. Up to 8 devices can employ ReadyBoost in Windows 7, each needing a minimum of 256 megabytes of free space. ReadyBoost is configured from the ReadyBoost tab of the Properties dialog box for the removable media device.
Thank you kindly, sir. So it's RAM on the go almost. And as you can see, it's it will be used if you're running something that's kind of intense and it needs to find a place to have caching available. So like I said, I plugged it into my Windows 7 PC and tried to see if there was a change, but I guess I don't do enough anything to make, I didn't notice a difference. So it's neat that we've gotten to a place where we could try to give a PC some help in that department by utilizing those media. So ReadyBoost, Windows 7, 8.1, and 10. I wonder if anybody else used it. No? Maybe not. Okay.
I tried it. I didn't see any performance, and I'm reading here, and it says basically, if your system is under rammed, it does some good, but other than that,
Yeah, it's only meant when you run out of RAM. Therefore, if you're not running out of RAM, it's not going to use it.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. All right. Pin that we don't really see much from 8.1. I'm just going to go through these really quick. We already know that the whole purpose of Windows with 8 and 8.1 was to give you that look of that mobile aesthetics. So like Alvarez said, to get the most out of it, it would have been nice to have a touchscreen type option. And 8.1 came right in after 8 to make it easier to use that start button. Joseph, so they heard your cry. It was hard to maneuver on it, so they tried to bring out that start button. The multi-monitor taskbar is still, like I said, is the ability to, it was the look in a lot of this. So, and we showed you a picture of the Metro UI, so you kind of got a grasp of that GUI that was set up. And that's all that this is pretty much speaking from. What happened in 8.1, which is the start button through a patch, and that GUI or that Metro UI feel that mimicked a mobile device. So wanted to very, very concise on that information. Okay, and I think as we end, these are some features that's built into Windows 10. App Blocker, which allows for policies to be created in group policy to access controlled application. And if you are running some type of Active Directory and you're using a group policy option, App Blocker is being utilized. Branch Cache is a Microsoft client server tech that allows for caching of commonly accessed files at branch office locations, which kind of, I guess that's very specific.
Similar to website caching. In this case, what happens is, let's say you went to in Mahwah, New Jersey, and decided to download something from there. Now that I downloaded in the morning, now Marvin decides that he wants to come in and download the exact same information. The first time it might have taken me approximately about 45 seconds to a minute to download this file. But since branch cache was turned on and Marvin took reaped benefits from me downloading it, it took him approximately 1 to 2 seconds to download it, since it is already cached on the local server in the branch. Very similar to website caching. In this case, it does it with file servers.
And to end this with direct access, allowing automatic connection to a VPN between the client and the main office. So 10 has beefed up some of the applications and features that it has to make it a better operating system. And it's time for me now to allow Laz to get going. has a lab that ties directly into what we're doing right now.
All right, it's going to be basically test out time, as I like to call it. So what we need to do is ask some questions about Windows. And one of the things that we got to go through is, what is the kernel's function? What is the difference between a GUI and a CLI? Same thing about the information that Marvin was talking about when it comes to your taskbar and notifications. And also, how do you interface with these components as well when you're running other programs and etc. And also, how do you index it to improve your searching as well? And over here, we have a lot of terms that I recommend that you review. Some of these things could be something that will be on your tests. So I highly recommend you look at them. Some of them you may remember from Core 1, like multiprocessing or multi-threading. Maybe you have an idea what that is related to. So let's move on and take a look at the rest of the stuff here. So let's look at a nice little video here and get going.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about operating systems. The operating system serves as an interface between
All right, we're talking about, oh, you lost it, Diego.
Know where it went. I guess I'll open it up again. Can you see it?
Yeah, we see it right now. Oh,
Can
it's
you hear it?
working now. Yeah, just make it full screen.
In this lesson,
Oh,
we're going to talk
perfect.
about operating systems. The operating system serves as an interface between the applications running on the computer and the computer hardware. If we drew this out, we would have the computer's hardware here. The hardware is the motherboard, the CPU, the memory, the hard drive, the DVD drive, and the video card. On top of the hardware, we install an operating system, which we'll label OS. Because the operating system and the hardware are independent of each other, we can install any operating system like Windows, Mac, or Linux onto our choice of hardware. Then, on top of the operating system, we install our applications. The first job of the operating system is to provide a platform for our applications. Applications need a place to run, and they can't run directly on the hardware, so there has to be an operating system sitting in between to allow this to happen. The operating system also accesses the hardware for the applications. Not only does the operating system provide a platform for the application to run on, but it also provides a way for the applications to access the hardware in the computer. The operating system software includes special routines that allows an application programmer to access certain pieces of hardware in the computer without having to do a lot of work. For instance, let's say that we have an application that we're writing and we want to be able to send a print job through a USB port on the PC system. Without an operating system, we would have to write the exact instructions for accessing the USB port on the hardware. But with an operating system, we don't have to worry about that because the person who wrote the operating system included the instructions for accessing the USB port. All we have to do is send the print job to the USB port, and the operating system formats the job and gets it to the USB port. The operating system also provides security. Any operating system you use may require you to provide some kind of credentials, like logging in with a username and a password to use the computer. The operating system checks its database of valid users and their passwords and decides, based on that information, whether or not you can use that computer. This is an important feature because it helps prevent the loss of important data. The operating system also manages our file system. The file system encompasses all the different storage devices that are installed on the computer. The operating system is responsible for organizing and storing the data that you're working on one of these storage devices, whether it's the hard disk or a flash drive. Managing the file system also relates to moderating hardware because we're talking about working with specific pieces of hardware like the hard disk drive, a CD or DVD drive, or a flash drive. The first component of the operating system is called the kernel. The kernel is the core of the operating system. It's what's loaded into memory when the system boots up. The kernel performs most of the critical operating system jobs that we just talked about. It's responsible for managing the file system, it's responsible for managing security, for working with the hardware, and for providing a platform for applications to run on. The kernel runs behind the scenes and does the bulk of the work, so you won't work with it. Utilities are another component of a typical operating system. The utilities are the parts that you actually work with on a daily basis. For example, if you're using Windows and you open My Computer and browse your hard drive and open a file, you're using a utility. You're not actually using the kernel, but you're using a utility that's part of the operating system that's interacting with the kernel to do a particular job. Most operating systems come with many utilities. Today's operating systems are huge, in large part because of the utilities that we pack around the kernel. We could draw that like this. We have our kernel, and then all around the kernel, we have many different utilities. Another key component of the operating system is called an interface. The interface allows the user to interact with the kernel and the utilities. there are two different types of interfaces. The first type of interface is a command line interface. An example of a command line interface is Linux. You can see the command prompt at the bottom of a black screen. If we want to run a program or run a utility, we type the command in at the prompt, hit enter, and the program or utility runs. Command line interfaces are very powerful. The second type of interface is called a graphical user interface, or GUI, as it's known in the industry. Instead of using a command line, a GUI represents things graphically on the screen. If you've used Windows and you've clicked on the icons or the start button with a mouse, you've used a graphical user interface. Linux also includes a graphical user interface. The command line interface and the graphical user interface are both fantastic for their different purposes. Sometimes you need the power and flexibility offered by a command line interface. However, when you're doing just day-to-day work, it's nice to be able to double-click on something and have it work. That's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we learned that the role of the operating system is to act as an interface for applications, access the hardware, provide security, and manage the file system. The components of the operating system include the kernel, which manages the file system and security, works with the hardware, and provides a platform for applications to run on. And we use an interface to run utilities and applications that run on the kernel itself.
That was an excellent video. It gives you basically an overview of basically how you're going to interact with your operating system, even included Linux, which we get further on T-39, believe. But for now, let's look at what they're talking about here. They're talking about some interesting things: multiprocessing, multitasking, and then you have also little definitions here that we are going through again: kernel, driver, interface, utilities, applications. Very important thing that everyone here knows, that the kernel is precious. You don't interact with it, but the utilities do. And the utility that will be common on the exam is something called the shell. And we get into great details in the future about that. Your command prompt is able to talk to the kernel. You don't talk to the kernel. The shell basically translated to the kernel to do what you want. That is a very nice way to put it there. And then your drivers, basically, as we learned in Core 1, tells the operating system how to use me. And then you have the interface, which is basically how you do it all. And very common way that everyone knows how to do it is a GUI, G-U-I, Graphical User Interface. And then all of that works pretty well when it comes to utilities. If you want to double click on your control panel, you want to use some tools, or you want to go to your browser, these are things that your GUI helps use to interact with your utilities that you want to use. And there you go, applications as well. So they all work together. One thing helps interface with the other, and the other helps talks to the kernel. But everything goes back to the kernel. Remember that, very precious. Imagine if a hacker gets control of your kernel. Basically, your whole system's compromised at that point. So let's take a look at the next good stuff here.
And my friends, that was my ice cream truck passing by. We're 1 minute over. We'll pause the recording here.
I don't think Laz has made it back yet, Diego.
No, correct. I spoke to him. He
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
In this demonstration, we're going to take a look at the Windows 10 user interface. Windows 10 has a lot of the features that customers liked from earlier versions of Windows and combine them to make an interface that most users like better. On Windows 10, if I click the Windows icon down here, it brings up a start menu where we see a miniaturized version of my start screen. Notice that I have two different types of app tiles. We have the standard app tile, whose display is static. We also have the live tiles, whose display is not static. It's dynamically updated with new information. For example, the Microsoft Store app right here has no information currently displayed. Neither does the Microsoft Edge app. However, my weather app does have information displayed on it. It's constantly being updated with new information for the current weather conditions in my location. To start a Windows 10 app, all I have to do is click it from the Start menu, and the app is loaded. You'll notice that in Windows 10, there are a lot of controls that we use with standard desktop apps, like the close, maximize, and minimize buttons. If we come back here to the Start menu, you'll notice that only a subset of the apps and the applications installed on the system are displayed on the right side of the Start menu. If we want to see all of the apps installed on the system, we can see them right here on the left side of the Start menu. Be careful with the word apps because it can be kind of misleading. When talking about apps, you might think about Windows Store apps. With Windows 10, we're kind of getting away from the application versus app concept, although it is still valid. We're starting to call all the programs running on the system apps, even if they are traditional desktop apps. For example, when we view all apps, we see both Windows Store apps like alarms and clock, as well as traditional apps such as Acrobat Reader. You can see that the user interface used by a desktop app uses an interface that's very similar to that used by the Microsoft Store apps now. By default, we see the recently added apps here at the top of the list. My own preference, however, is to see the most used apps, which provides you with an easy way to start the apps that you use the most. To change this, we go down here and type Start Settings and click to open it. Then we can toggle off the Show Recently Added Apps and then toggle on the Show Most Used Apps here. If we go back to the Start menu, the most used apps are automatically added to a most used list here. For example, on this system, you can see that I've used the File Explorer, Control Panel, Microsoft Edge, and Maps. Now you're not stuck with just these. If you want to manually add an app to your Start menu, you can scroll down to View Apps, locate the app in question, such as Acrobat Reader, right-click it, and choose Pin to Start. Then a tile for that app is added down here to the Start menu. In addition, we have a link here for settings. Click it and it brings up your Settings app. There's something that's significant with Windows 10. It is the fact that a lot of the features and functionality that we associate with Control Panel is slowly being migrated from Control Panel over here to the Settings app. You'll notice as you work with Windows 10 that there are some settings that used to be available in Control Panel that are no longer available in Control Panel at all. If you want to use them, you have to go to the Settings app. You'll also notice that there are many settings in Control Panel that are duplicated over here in the Settings app. Likewise, there are several settings that are available only in the Settings app. And of course, there's still some settings over here in the Control Panel that are available only in Control Panel. The Windows 10 desktop also includes our notification area over here. The look and feel of the notification area is slightly different, but the way it works is almost identical to the way it worked in earlier versions of Windows. We also have our quick launch area down here on the taskbar, and we have the taskbar itself. Whenever we start an application, such as Acrobat Reader, an icon is automatically added to the taskbar. There is another feature of the Windows 10 user interface that is new in Windows 10. It's never been used in earlier versions of Windows, although it has been widely implemented in the Linux operating system, the graphical desktop used by Linux operating systems. It is the concept of virtual desktops. Right now, we're looking at the main Windows desktop. There's this icon right down here. We click it, it's called Task View. We can add virtual desktops to our system by clicking New Desktop up here. I can switch between desktops. For example, we could run Acrobat Reader on desktop 1 here, but we can also switch to our new desktops as well. We can go to desktop 2, and I can run Microsoft Edge on this desktop. You can switch back and forth between them by clicking Task View. I can even add more desktops as well. I have 5 desktops. You can delete any of these virtual desktops by clicking the X that appears when you hover over each desktop, like shown here. Keep in mind that any apps that were open in any of the closed virtual desktops will default back to your next available desktop. In Task View, we also see here below apps and web pages that have been used earlier. If you click one, it opens it up in the highlighted virtual desktop above. This feature makes it really nice and helps keep your desktop from being cluttered up with lots of running applications. The last thing we're going to look at in this demonstration is Cortana. Notice down here that there's a search field and it says type here to search. Cortana is a personal assistant. It's really like Siri on Apple iOS devices. There's 2 different ways that you can use Cortana. One way is to type things in the search field here that you want Cortana to look for. For example, I can type test out in the search field. It will search not only local resources, but also resources out on the internet and help me find what it is I'm looking for. You can also use speech recognition to talk to Cortana. If you have a microphone set up on your system, you can use your voice to ask Cortana questions, and Cortana will go out on the internet and find the answers to what you're looking for. We can't do that in this demonstration because my voice is being recorded and it's being piped away from the operating system itself, so there's no way to send voice commands to it, but I could if I wanted to. I want to show you if you click Cortana here, there's a settings button here where you can customize how Cortana works. Now right now, there are several different settings that you can configure. For example, you can configure the microphone, lock screen, language, permissions and history, and so on. One of the ways that Cortana works is that it gathers information based upon all the searches that you make. It stores that information in the cloud. That way, when you ask a particular question of Cortana, it takes a look at the stuff that you've looked up in the past and customizes the results based on what your preferences and interests are. You can manage this information using this right here. If I click the search bar, notice that I can customize my search as to what I'm looking for. For example, I can say I'm just looking for a particular app, or I'm looking for a particular document, or I'm just looking for something on the web. I can specify that here. That's it for this demonstration. In this demo, we talked about the Windows 10 user interface. We first looked at the Start menu, then we talked about virtual desktops. And we ended this demonstration by looking at Cortana.
Okay, so any doubts on the terminology of what a desktop, what the Start menu is, taskbar, notification, Windows Explorer, control panel, as we see here.
I didn't know you could do multiple desktops.
Oh yeah, that's what they copied the Linux and Apple in that, obviously.
So that's to be used as opposed to just opening up multiple windows and like splitting your screen. You can just switch from full screen to full screen.
Yeah, so I can go ahead and go in here. I can come back over here, and depending which desktop and what I have open, it'll bring it right back.
If you got multi-screens, you can run one on each one.
Oh well, you have multi-screen, you'll have, for instance, right now, I'll have a total of 12 screens open right now. Every time I go to a different desktop, each screen has, since I have 3 screens, each desktop has 3 different windows. I can
Wait,
actually,
I was talking about an actual monitor. If you had a second monitor.
well, if you have a second monitor, you just have to extend the desktop. And that
Okay.
is a feature that's been there for years, which is basically to go into the actual settings. But what this is doing is that instead of cluttering each of your desktop with a whole bunch of windows, in this case, if you wanted to have specific applications in desktop, you can put them in there. And then if you want to have other applications in desktop, you can. So every time you open a brand new desktop, it'll only bring you those applications that you currently have open.
Okay.
Did it just close? That's just beautiful. Why does it do that every time I minimize? Somehow it closes that. That's not pretty. All right. Not sure what happened there. We just saw that one, right? No, did we? Somebody help me out. Oh, there we are. That was Kernel there. Here goes the start menu. And here goes the brief exam. You guys can take that on your own leisure. We'll continue then now to where we were. By now, then, ultimately, we should be able to describe the purpose and function of an OS, identifying the main features within the Microsoft OS, and compare and contrast the various. We did give you guys an actual handout prior to this starting. Please feel free to review and do asynchronous with each other at any time and fill it out to be able to compare and contrast all the features that each one had. Any questions in reference to an OS? And then obviously we need to understand how critical it is, the software, and what it actually does. Could someone more or less in their own word tell me what's the main purpose and functions of the OS?
It runs all of the devices on the PC. It coordinates everything. Yeah, it's what is that? It's your interface to communicate to the kernel to get whatever job you want done.
Exactly. It has those 2 parts, right? It has the internal component, which we call the kernel, and then you have the external portion, which is the shell that it runs on, and then everything runs on that, be the utilities that you're running or your application. They all interface with the actual shell. You have a command line interface or a GUI to be able to run the different commands to the actual kernel. Thank you. Any questions or doubts?
Can you explain the workstation one more time? I know what it is, but can you just?
What a workstation is?
Mm-hmm.
A workstation would be considered a host. In other words, it would be a computer where the user usually uses, and hence his name workstation, where you usually log in. A server would be a large computer that's providing services. So workstations are usually used with the user. They're the ones that have workstations at their desk. Hence, a desktop is a workstation. A laptop is a workstation, for instance. It's basically the one that the user is using to be able to get services from any server.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. Good question. We appreciate those. Right. I think that's all she wrote on this one. We can go on to the next presentation.